There is no other healthcare provider that I can think of that will spend an hour to an hour and a half with a couple that has just found out something devastating regarding their pregnancy. Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. It's Amin here and I am back with another genetic counseling video. I am a full-time certified genetic counselor. I've been working for about 2.5 years. I made a ton of content on my channel about being a genetic counseling student, being a full-time genetic counselor, a prenatal counselor, going through my board exams, all of that. If it's the first time you've heard about genetic counseling, take a look at all the other videos to get more of a sense of what the profession is. And today I am so excited to be doing another Q&A. It's been a while since I've posted like a GC related video on this channel, and so a few weeks ago I went on my Instagram and I asked you guys to really ask me anything about the profession, things that you're wondering about, things you wanted my opinion on, and of course I got a few juicy questions for all of you. I haven't read them in advance, so I don't have any prepared answers for you. First question we'll go through is what keeps me inspired about the field now that I'm 2 years in? That is a great question. I've spent some time thinking about this just in general, but also I think my answer has changed since I first started practicing. So as you may know, I'm in prenatal genetics, which is a very stressful specialty in the profession, and I've talked about it many times on my channel before. I thoroughly enjoy my role. I really like working in high stress situations. I like having those emotional, distressing conversations. It can sound so weird to people, but there's a certain kind of person, and I found my people, the people that I work with that love prenatal, also love it for the same reasons. And so what keeps me inspired, even though some days are so hard and some days I'm just honestly questioning, how is this my job? Like, I give a lot of bad news on a regular basis. I was actually just talking about this with one of my new coworkers, so I'm training her on prenatal. The conversations that we have are really sad and they can be distressing. The thing that really keeps me going is how grateful patients are that you were there with them every step of the way. That time is so valuable, and it is something that I know no other provider will be able to give them. And that's why I think my role, a profession as a genetic counselor, is so invaluable. There is no other healthcare provider that I can think of that will spend an hour to an hour and a half with a couple that has just found out something devastating regarding their pregnancy. And even if in the moment that person's really upset, they're, high stress, really emotional about everything, at the end of it all, those emails that you get, those gifts that you get, the, phone conversations that you have with them where somebody tells you you changed their life, and all of that makes it worth it. Like, there is no other profession, I think, that will give me this gratification that I get. And maybe at some point in my life, I won't be as inspired as I am right now in terms of prenatal genetics. I do wonder about what my life would look like in a few years, like whether I start family planning, would that change my viewpoint on things? And so at any point in my career, if I do feel that I'm not inspired by my role anymore, the good thing about genetic counseling is that there are so many avenues that I can take. There's so many different specialties. So currently, still very inspired, still loving prenatal genetics, but if that changes, I will let you know. Then I had a couple of questions about graduate school, being in genetic counseling school. So not necessarily how to get into school, because I have lots of videos about that. This video is actually going up during the time when people are doing interviews. If you're preparing for any of your interviews, I do have an entire video where I have given you advice on how to prepare for your interviews. That is honestly the most stressful time of, applying to genetic counseling school. So definitely go and check that out. One of the questions that I got was, what was the hardest course that I had in grad school? And I think this depends on so many different factors. Definitely depends on you as a person, like what you're strong in, what you're not strong in, and then also your program. Every program will have a different set of courses. So the program that I went to, one of the most difficult courses by far, there's actually two that come to mind. One was embryology. So I come from a biology background, like an undergraduate school. I went to a very rigorous school as well. I was used to the level of academic expectation that was required of me. Part of it has to do with like how the instructor teaches the course as well, but there was just a lot of information, and at that time I wasn't really sure how this was going to be relevant to what I was going to do on a regular basis. But now I totally do recognize that, because I made all of my notes virtually for all of my courses, and every single day, I kid you not, every single day I go to my Google Drive and I look up the notes that I have made while I was in graduate school. So whether that be the board exam notes, whether that be certain classes, for example, in embryology, we spent a lot of time on heart defects, and I use those notes about heart defects all the time. So in the moment, I thought it was really difficult and like, why did I need to know all these minute details? But now I totally understand. Another course that I found that was difficult was medical genetics, and every week we had a different specialist that came in and talked about their area, and it was really hard for me to, like, in the moment be so detail oriented, the nitty gritty about every single condition. But again, I saved all those PowerPoints and I refer back to them on a regular basis. In my role in prenatal, that's what I do most of the time. I do, however, also see general cases, so general adult cases, carrier screening, and I come across conditions I have never heard of or conditions that I don't interact with on a regular basis every single day. So I need to be able to do some research on these conditions, you know, learn the inheritance pattern, the features, testing that's available for it, and I refer back to my notes all the time. So if you're in grad school and you're wondering what is the purpose of all of these courses, there is a purpose. Every program has to go through a accreditation system. So every course that they're teaching you is, you know, there to prepare you to write the boards and become a successful genetic counselor. In the moment, obviously it feels a little bit different, but it will be worth it in the end. Another question that I got in terms of graduate school kind of has to do more for the application process. So I might have answered this question in other videos of mine, but the question is, what are grad schools looking for in applicants to have? So is research or working in labs one of them? Pretty sure I've talked about this before. Every program is different. In terms of research or lab, it again depends on the program itself. Some programs are more research focused, some are more clinical focused, some are more psychology, counseling focused. So it all depends on like kind of that aspect of things. I don't think it's a requirement for you to have some lab or research-based experience, but if you feel like that's something that's lacking in your resume, in your CV, then it might be worth exploring if opportunities exist. I don't think it would guarantee that you would get an interview if you did have research or lab-based experience as well. It all also depends on what you want to do in the end run. Like there are genetic counselors that work in lab-based settings. There are research genetic counselors. If that's something that you're interested in, you know, that could be a really good way to explore that before getting into graduate school and then telling the schools that I think I'm really interested in this avenue. There's no expectations in genetic counseling anymore. People go into school with the idea of working in a non-clinical role now, and that's completely fine. So if you feel that you need to bump up your application in some way and you're missing this lab experience, this research experience, I think by all means go ahead. Do I think you need it? No. I was in that scenario where I thought I was missing it and I was really anxious about not having the perfect resume. So I went out and I did some lab experience. Do I think it changed my life drastically? Not at all. It was just something that I wanted to add to my resume, and I actually did end up getting a pretty good letter of reference from it. That's another bonus of having varied experiences on your application. The last question I'm going to be answering are, what are the benefits of taking the Canadian boards this person is debating at the moment? So this is, you know, very dependent on your situation. I totally know people that have written only the Canadian boards. I would say the majority of people, if they're writing one, they'll choose the American boards, but most people that I work with write both. So I have both certifications, both American and Canadian. It really comes down to personal preference. It also depends on the workplace that you're in. Most people that I know have had their job offers before they write their board exam. So at some point in the summer, you've secured a job. And I think it's really important to ask your employer what they prefer. So that was one of the questions that I asked, even when I was interviewing for jobs, what their requirement was, if they needed me to write one of the board exams, both of them, and what my time frame was, because every job will have a different time frame. Some will tell you can't start working until you have passed your boards. Some will say you have 1 year, some will say you have 2 years, and they'll tell you if they require one or both. That's a really important factor. Another factor is just like your life. Like, are you going to be able to write both of them? So they are offered at, you know, certain times of the year. So I ended up writing one in one summer and then one the summer after. And really the reason I did that was to make sure all of my doors were open no matter what situation I would be in the future. So at some point in the future, if I changed employers and they required me to have a Canadian certification, I already had that under my belt. I wouldn't need to go out and write another exam, you know, at that point in my life when I probably am kind of out of the studying loop. I think the odds of that happening are low, but just to be prepared, I decided to write both. And so that's one of the factors that maybe you want to consider. Like I said, the majority of people end up writing one. If they write one, most of them write the American one, because that way you can work mostly in a Canadian institution, but then also American companies as well. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you have more questions for me, I would be more than happy to do another Q&A in the future. Let me know down below if you have any other questions or if you like this kind of video, any other suggestions for videos as well. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, give it a thumbs up and I will see you next time. Thanks for watching. Bye.